The fluorescent lights in Stonewall Correctional Facility hummed with a faint buzz, slicing through the stale midnight air. The prison's east block was quieter than usual, only the echo of boots against concrete breaking the silence. Officer Daniel Kincaid, 13-9, moved down the corridor with the rigid posture of a man bound by duty but haunted by something far darker. His uniform was crisp, his badge gleamed under the flicker of lights, yet his eyes betrayed restlessness. They shifted constantly toward cell E-17. Inside, Marcus Hale waited. He was not like the other inmates. There was an energy about him, a sharpness in the way he carried himself, as though the bars were merely an inconvenience rather than a sentence. His piercing stare followed Kincaid's every movement. When their eyes locked, Marcus smirked, and it was the kind of smirk that carried weight, a dangerous reminder of what they both risked. Kincaid adjusted his grip on the heavy key ring at his side, forcing his gaze away. He had sworn to himself it would end weeks ago. He had promised he would never come near Marcus again. But here he was, drawn back like a moth to a flame, fully aware of the fire waiting to consume him. The corridor emptied. Radios crackled faintly in the distance, muffled by thick concrete walls. Marcus leaned forward against the bars, his voice dropping into a low whisper. "You took your time tonight." Kincaid hesitated, pulse thundering in his ears. He should have walked away, should have called in a routine security check, anything but this. Instead, his boots carried him closer, his shadow stretching long against the wall until it merged with Marcus's. "Keep your voice down," Kincaid muttered, glancing over his shoulder. Marcus tilted his head, eyes glinting in the dim light. "Why? Afraid they'll find out what you really are?" Kincaid's jaw clenched. His chest tightened as Marcus's words cut through him. He hated that Marcus had this power, hated that despite the uniform and authority, he felt like the prisoner. He slipped the key from his belt, the sound of metal scraping against metal reverberating like thunder in the silence. The lock turned. The door creaked open. Marcus stepped forward, slow and deliberate, every movement dripping with confidence. For a fleeting second, the world outside the East Block ceased to exist. It was just them, bound together by secrecy and desire. Marcus's fingers brushed over Kincaid's sleeve. "You keep coming back. Makes me wonder if you're addicted to me, or to the danger." The officer swallowed hard, fighting to steady his breath. "This is reckless. Someone will notice." Marcus leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "Someone already has. Secrets never stay hidden, Daniel." Before Kincaid could respond, a distant door slammed. Echoing footsteps rang out, sending panic surging through him. He shoved Marcus back into the cell, fumbling with the keys. The lock clicked shut just as another officer's shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor. "Everything secure down here?" the officer called. Kincaid straightened, forcing composure into his tone. "All secure." The other guard gave a curt nod and disappeared. Kincaid's heart pounded. He turned back to Marcus, whose smirk lingered like a brand. "Sooner or later," Marcus whispered, his voice a venomous promise, "this secret will kill you." The words lodged deep in Kincaid's mind, heavy and unshakable. He knew Marcus wasn't wrong. And as the lights flickered once more, Kincaid realized something chilling. In a place built on cages, he had already locked himself inside one of his own making. Morning in Stonewall Correctional Facility was never gentle. The blaring alarm ripped through the cell blocks, followed by the mechanical groan of doors unlocking. Inmates shuffled into line for head count, the air thick with sweat, disinfectant, and the metallic temps of iron bars. Officer Daniel Kincaid stood rigid at his post, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning faces with forced detachment. Yet behind the mask of authority, his nerves churned. He hadn't slept. Marcus's words still echoed like a curse. Sooner or later, this secret will kill you. Marcus Hale moved casually with the line, his smirk carved into his face like it was permanent. He never broke eye contact with Kincaid. Every glance felt like a knife, twisting deeper, a silent reminder of the noose tightening around them. "Yo, Hale," an inmate called from the back. "You been getting extra perks lately. Must've made a new friend." Laughter spread through the line, raw and mocking. Kincaid's hand gripped the clipboard tighter. His pulse spiked. The whispers had started. Prison gossip traveled faster than contraband, and once it took root, it became impossible to contain. Later, in the break room, Officer Marlene Torres leaned against the vending machine, sipping burnt coffee. She was sharp-eyed, always watching, and nothing slipped past her. "Kincaid," she said casually, "you've been spending a lot of time near East Block. Something I should know." Kincaid kept his expression steady. "Routine patrol. East Block's been restless lately." Torres tilted her head, studying him. "Restless, huh? Or maybe just one inmate in particular?" Her words cut like glass. He forced a dry laugh. "You're seeing ghosts, Torres." But he could tell by her eyes she wasn't buying it. Back on duty, Kincaid found himself once again near E17. He didn't want to be, but his steps betrayed him, drawn like gravity. Marcus leaned against the bars, waiting. "You hear them talking?" Marcus asked in a low voice. Kincaid's throat tightened. "Shut up." Marcus chuckled darkly. "You think you can silence whispers. That's not how prisons work. They'll chew you up, spit you out. You need to get ahead of it." Kincaid frowned. "What are you saying?" Marcus leaned closer, his words sliding like poison. "If someone knows, you make sure they don't talk, ever." The suggestion made Kincaid's stomach turn. He was an officer of the law, sworn to protect order. But Marcus's voice had a way of worming under his skin, twisting sense into madness. He shook his head. "You're insane." "Am I?" Marcus said softly, his eyes narrowing. "Because right now, I'm the only one keeping your secret safe. Maybe you should think about what happens when someone else isn't as loyal." The weight of the threat settled heavy. Kincaid stepped back, jaw locked, but his hands trembled. Marcus watched with satisfaction, like a puppeteer tugging invisible strings. As Kincaid turned to leave, Officer Torres's voice rang out from behind. "Long shift, huh?" He froze, then forced a nod. "Yeah, just checking the block." She smiled faintly, but her eyes never left his face. "Careful, Kincaid. Too much time in one place makes people ask questions." That night, lying awake in his small apartment, Kincaid stared at the ceiling. The whispers had begun, and with them came the unraveling of control. He thought of Marcus's words, of Torres's suspicions, of the laughter in the line. He could already feel the walls closing in. Secrets, he realized, weren't just dangerous. They were deadly. The cafeteria at Stonewall Correctional was always a battlefield of noise, metal trays clattering, voices rising in overlapping chaos, the sharp tang of institutional food filling the air. Officer Daniel Kincaid walked the perimeter with his baton resting against his thigh, eyes scanning the sea of orange jumpsuit. Yet even among the noise, he could feel it, the stares, the whispers, the laughter that wasn't meant to be heard but burned just the same. Marcus Hale sat at the far corner, his back to the wall, tray untouched. His eyes never left Kincaid. With a subtle tilt of his head, Marcus signaled for him to come closer. Kincaid ignored him at first, but Marcus's smirk lingered, needling under his skin until he gave in. Sliding closer, Kincaid lowered his voice. "Stop looking at me like that. People are starting to notice." Marcus leaned forward, his tone dripping with quiet menace. "Good, let them notice. Makes it harder for them to prove anything." Kincaid's stomach twisted. "You think this is a game? My career, my life, is on the line." Marcus's eyes glinted with dark amusement. "Your life's already on the line, Daniel. You just don't realize it yet." A loud laugh erupted from a nearby table. Inmates nudged each other, eyes flicking between Marcus and Kincaid. The paranoia gnawed at him. He turned on his heel, striding toward the exit, his chest tight. Outside the cafeteria, Officer Marlene Torres leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You're jumpy," she observed, eyes sharp as knives. "Just tired," Kincaid muttered. Avoiding her gaze, Torres narrowed her eyes. "Funny, you get tired around the same inmate every time. You want to tell me why that is?" Kincaid forced a chuckle. "Coincidence." But Torres didn't laugh. She leaned in, voice dropping. "Be careful, Kincaid. I've been around long enough to know when something stinks. And whatever's going on between you and Halit's going to blow up." Her words clung to him long after she walked away that night. Kincaid drove home through rain-slicked streets, the wipers beating in sync with his thoughts. His small apartment greeted him with silence. He dropped his keys, peeled off his damp uniform, and stared at himself in the bathroom mirror. The face looking back was haggard, the lines deeper, the eyes hollow. He whispered to himself, "You're losing control." But control was already gone. He could feel Marcus's grip tightening, invisible chains wrapping around his throat. A buzz from his phone pulled him from his spiral. An anonymous message lit up the screen. "We know." His blood ran cold. No number, no name. Just two words that shattered the illusion of secrecy. The next morning, he confronted Marcus during rounds. "Did you send this?" He shoved the phone against the bars. Marcus raised an eyebrow, amused. "You think I've got a burner phone in here? Cute. Maybe you've got more eyes on you than you thought." Kincaid's pulse hammered. Marcus leaned closer, voice low. "This is the part where the walls start closing in. You can't run from it, but you can control it. If someone knows, remove them." The suggestion curdled in Kincaid's gut. "I'm not a killer," Marcus smirked. "Everyone's a killer when their life's on the line." The words clung to him like a shadow. For the first time, Kincaid realized Marcus wasn't just a risk, he was a prophecy. The night shift had always been Kincaid's refuge: quiet halls, dim corridors, the hum of distant generators. But tonight, the silence pressed in heavier than usual, carrying with it the weight of suspicion and secrets. His boots echoed as he moved through East Block. Each step a reminder of the storm building around him. Marcus Hale was awake, sitting on the edge of his cot. The dim light through the bars carved shadows across his sharp features. He looked less like an inmate and more like a predator in waiting. "You look worse every night," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying in the stillness. "What's eating you, Daniel? Or should I say who?" Kincaid clenched his fists. "Enough. I've had enough of this. You think you can control me, but you're wrong." Marcus rose slowly, stepping closer to the bars. His smirk returned infuriatingly calm. "Control? No. Influence. Absolutely. But let's not pretend you don't like it. You came to me. You unlocked the door. You crossed the line." Kincaid's breathing quickened. He wanted to deny it, but Marcus's words echoed the truth. The line had already been crossed, and every night since had dragged him further into the abyss. From the far end of the corridor, footsteps approached. Torres appeared, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Her gaze fell instantly on Kincaid, then flicked to Marcus. "What are you doing here?" she asked sharply. Kincaid forced composure. "Routine check." Torres's eyes narrowed. "Routine checks don't last 10 minutes in front of one cell." The accusation hung heavy. Marcus leaned back on his cot, grinning. "Officer Torres, he's just making sure I'm comfortable. Isn't that right, Daniel?" Kincaid's jaw tightened. Torres studied his face, suspicion hardening into something sharper. Without another word, she turned and walked away, but the damage was done. Marcus chuckled low. "She knows. Maybe not everything, but enough. You feel that, Daniel? That noose tightening?" Kincaid stormed off, heart pounding, the sound of Marcus's laughter chasing him down the corridor. Back in the break room, he sat with his head in his hands. The walls seemed closer, the air thicker. His phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. "Torres is watching you." The letters blurred as panic took hold. He couldn't breathe. The prison wasn't just a workplace anymore, it was a trap, closing in from every angle. Later that night, as rain battered the narrow windows, Kincaid sat in his car outside his apartment, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Marcus's words repeated in his mind. "If someone knows, so move them." He shook his head violently. "No, I'm not doing this. I'm not." But doubt seeped in, insidious and relentless. Torres was sharp, persistent. If she dug too deep, everything would collapse: his career, his freedom, his life. The thought made his stomach churn. Yet another thought followed, darker and more persuasive. Maybe Marcus was right. Inside his apartment, Kincaid poured whiskey into a glass, hands trembling. He stared at his reflection in the darkened window, rain streaking like tears down the glass. He whispered to himself, voice breaking, "How much longer before it all explodes?" Behind his reflection in the glass, he almost imagined Marcus's smirk staring back. Morning sunlight spilled weakly through the barred windows of Stonewall's administrative wing, but there was no warmth in it. The walls smelled faintly of bleach and stale coffee, a constant reminder of the institution's lifeless rhythm. Officer Daniel Kincaid sat across from Warden Collins in a cramped office, pretending to listen as paperwork shuffled. But his mind was elsewhere, on Torres, on Marcus Labas's, on the messages that kept appearing. "You've been distracted," Collins said suddenly, peering over his glasses. "Everything all right at home?" Kincaid forced a tight smile. Just long shifts, sir. Nothing I can't handle. Collins studied him for a beat too long, then nodded. Good. Keep it that way. Rumors travel fast in a place like this. The last thing I need is a scandal. The word hit like a bullet. Scandal. Did Collins know something? Or was it just coincidence? Kincaid excused himself quickly, pulse hammering. In the yard that afternoon, Marcus Hale was surrounded by a circle of inmates, but his eyes never left Kincaid. The smirk was gone. In its place was something colder, sharper, silent warning. When the other inmates dispersed, Marcus approached the fence where Kincaid stood watch. Torres is getting close, Marcus murmured through the chain link. You can see it, can't you? The way she looks at you. Kincaid's jaw tightened. She's just doing her job. Marcus leaned closer, voice barely audible. She's digging, and when she finds something, you won't be Officer Kincaid anymore. You'll be inmate Kincaid. Think about that. Kincaid turned away, but the words burrowed deep. Later, in the staff lounge, Torres confronted him directly. You've been avoiding me. Kincaid kept his tone even. We're on different shifts, that's all. Torres leaned in, lowering her voice. Don't lie to me. I know something's off between you and Hale. I don't know what yet, but I will. And when I find out, you better pray it's not what I think it is. Her eyes bored into him, sharp and unrelenting. Then she walked away, leaving him frozen in place. That night, Kincaid sat in his car again, rain hammering the roof, whiskey burning in his veins. His phone buzzed. Another anonymous message lit the screen. Torres won't stop. Make her stop. His hand shook as he gripped the phone. He wanted to throw it out the window, but he couldn't. The words crawled into his mind, mingling with Marcus's voice, until he could no longer tell them apart. He pictured Torres's eyes, full of suspicion. He pictured her knocking on the warden's door, whispering the truth. He pictured his badge stripped away, his name in the headlines, his body locked behind the same bars he once guarded. Marcus's prophecy returned. Everyone's a killer when their life's on the line. The thought was poison. Yet it seeped through him, spreading fast. When he returned to the prison for his next shift, Kincaid caught Marcus watching him from E17, and Marcus mouthed two words through the bars. Slow and deliberate. Do it. Kincaid's stomach twisted violently. He tore his gaze away, but it was too late. The seed had already been planted, and deep down, he knew it was only a matter of time before it took root. The storm had settled over Stonewall Correctional like a curse. Thunder rumbling low, rain streaking down barred windows in crooked lines. Officer Daniel Kincaid walked the East Block with the weight of inevitability pressing down on his shoulders. His uniform felt heavier than armor, his badge more like a brand seared into his chest. Marcus Hale sat awake in E17, as if he had been waiting all night. His smirk was gone, replaced with something darker: expectation. He leaned into the bars, voice low. It's time, Daniel. She's going to ruin you. Kincaid's throat tightened. Stop. Don't say her name. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Torres, she knows. She'll go to Collins, and once she does, you'll be finished. You think your life is hard now? Wait until you're locked in here with men who'd kill you for a pack of cigarettes. You'll be prey, Daniel, unless the word lingered. Kincaid's hands clenched around the baton at his side. He hated how Marcus spoke, like a serpent coiling around his mind, squeezing until there was no room left for reason. Later, in the staff locker room, Torres confronted him again. Rain dripped from her jacket as she pulled him aside. "I saw you last night. You were at Hale's cell again. Don't lie to me. Something's going on, and I'm not letting it slide." Kincaid forced calm into his voice. "Torres, you're imagining things." She shook her head. "No, I'm not. I've got instincts, and they're screaming at me that you're in deep. I don't know if it's corruption, smuggling, or something worse, but I'll find out." Her certainty was a knife in his gut. He watched her walk away, her boots striking the floor with confidence. Each step echoed like a countdown to his destruction. That night, back on patrol, Kincaid lingered near the supply room. He stared at the heavy door, at the shadows flickering beneath it. Inside was everything he needed to end this: tools, chemicals, things meant for order but easily turned to chaos. His heart pounded as he stepped inside, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead. He reached for a rag, a vial of cleaning solvent, his hands trembling. The voice came from behind him, Marcus's, though he wasn't there. "She won't stop, Daniel. She'll bury you, unless you bury her first." Kincaid squeezed his eyes shut. Sweat dripped down his temple. He whispered into the empty room, "I'm not a killer." But when he opened his eyes, his reflection in the supply cabinet looked back at him with something colder, something harder. Later, during rounds, he found Torres alone in the east corridor. She was writing notes on a clipboard, her pen scratching against the paper. "Kincaid," she said without looking up, "I'm putting in a report tomorrow. We need to talk to the warden. This doesn't look good." Panic surged. His chest constricted. His vision narrowed until all he could see was her, the woman holding the match that would ignite his life in flames. His voice cracked. "Torres, don't." She looked up sharply. "Then give me a reason not to." Her eyes locked onto his, filled with determination. And in that moment, Kincaid realized there was no turning back. His hand tightened around the rag in his pocket, the sharp smell of solvent rising like smoke between them. The storm outside roared louder. The storm outside battered the prison walls, thunder rolling like war drums. Inside East Block, the air felt heavier than usual. Every shadow stretched long, every sound sharper. Officer Daniel Kincaid walked slowly down the dim corridor, each step echoing like a countdown he couldn't stop. In his pocket, the rag soaked with solvent clung to him like a sin waiting to be born. Marlene Torres stood alone at the far end, clipboard tucked under her arm as she checked cell assignments. Her posture was firm, confident, every inch the officer she was trained to be. She didn't see the storm inside Kincaid's eyes as he approached. "Kincaid," she said without looking up, "you know this won't end well if you don't come clean. I'm filing that report tomorrow." His pulse thundered. "Torres, don't." She turned her head, her gaze steady, sharp. "You've crossed a line. Maybe you don't see it, but I do. Whatever Hale has on you, it's over. I won't let him drag you down." Her words were meant to save him, but all he heard was ruin. Kincaid's breath quickened. His hand slipped into his pocket, fingers brushing the rag. The smell of solvent already filled his nose, acrid and suffocating. He felt the weight of Marcus's invisible hand pressing down on his shoulder, whispering the words that had haunted him for weeks. "Everyone's a killer when their life's on the line, Torres stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If you tell me now, I can help you. But if I take this to Collins—" She shook her head. "You'll be done." The hallway crackled with silence. Kincaid's chest heaved. He saw flashes his badge being stripped, handcuffs biting into his wrists. Marcus smirking from behind the bars as he became the prey. "I can't let you," Kincaid whispered, voice trembling. Torres frowned, confusion flashing across her face. "What?" He lunged. The rag clamped over her mouth, her scream muffled instantly. She struggled violently, clipboard clattering to the floor, pens skittering across the concrete. Her nails raked against his arms, desperate, furious. "Stop!" She gasped into the fabric. But the chemical fumes worked fast. Kincaid held tighter, tears stinging his eyes, his muscles trembling from the effort. Her kicks grew weaker, her hands clawed less, until finally her body sagged against him, limp, lifeless. For a moment there was nothing but the sound of rain hammering against the prison walls. Kincaid stood frozen, Torres's body slumped in his arms, the rag slipping from his hand. His mind screamed at him to undo it, to wake her, to pretend this never happened. But her vacant eyes stared back, glassy and final. A noise broke the silence. A slow clap. Kincaid's head jerked up. Down the corridor, standing in the shadows of his cell, Marcus Hale clapped his hands together, slowly, his smirk wide and knowing. "Well done, officer," Marcus drawled, voice smooth as velvet. "Didn't think you had it in you." Kincaid's stomach twisted violently. He staggered back, Torres's body sliding from his grip to the cold concrete. "You," his voice cracked, breaking under the weight of what he'd done. Marcus's grin widened. "Now you're mine forever." Thunder roared outside, drowning the sound of Kincaid's ragged breathing. He sank against the wall, staring at the lifeless body of his colleague, his friend, realizing the line he swore he'd never cross had vanished beneath his feet, and there was no way back. The rain outside hadn't stopped. It hammered the prison roof like a relentless drum, masking the horror that had unfolded in East Block. Officer Daniel Kincaid stood trembling, staring down at Marlene Torres's body sprawled across the concrete. Her clipboard lay a few feet away, its pages smudged with boot prints. Her pen had rolled into the shadows, a useless witness to the crime. His chest heaved, his mind screamed. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed to be me. From inside E17. Marcus Hale leaned against the bars, his smirk carved into the dim light. "You've done it now, Daniel. No turning back. You're not a guard." Kincaid snapped his head toward him, voice hoarse. "Shut up." Marcus only chuckled. "You think yelling makes it go away? You need to move her, now, before anyone comes down that hallway." Kincaid's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. He bent down, slipping his arms under Torres's body. She was heavy, her limp form dragging against the floor with a sickening sound. He swallowed bile, forcing himself to keep moving. "Storage room," Marcus whispered urgently. "End of the hall. No cameras in there." Kincaid hesitated, but Marcus's voice pressed like a knife. "Move, or you're finished." With trembling steps, Kincaid dragged Torres's body toward the storage room. The storm covered the sound, but every scrape of her boots felt deafening. Sweat dripped into his eyes, stinging, blinding him. Inside the storage room, the smell of bleach and chemicals burned his nostrils. He lowered her onto the floor, chest heaving, arms shaking. He stared at her lifeless face, the reality hitting him in waves. Torres, the one who tried to save him, the one who only wanted the truth, was gone by his hand. Marcus's voice drifted down the corridor, taunting. Good boy. Now, you'll need to clean it up. You've still got a chance, if you're smart. Kincaid slammed the door shut, leaning against it, his breath ragged. His hands were stained with solvent, sweat. His mind raced. What would he tell the others? How could he explain Torres's sudden absence? Hours crawled by. When his shift ended, he left the prison in silence, rain soaking through his jacket. At home, he scrubbed his arms until the skin was raw, but he couldn't wash off the guilt. Torres's eyes haunted him every time he closed his own. His phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. Well done, but it's not over. He dropped the phone, chest tightening. He didn't need to guess who was behind it. Marcus's reach went further than bars, deeper than walls. The next morning, Stonewall buzzed with unease. Torres hadn't clocked in. Rumors spread quickly. She was late, she was sick, she was missing. The warden paced his office, muttering about calling her family. Officers whispered in corners, voices laced with worry. Kincaid kept his face stone still, his answers short, but his pulse gave him away. He could feel eyes on him, too many eyes, during rounds. Marcus greeted him with that same devilish smirk. They'll be looking soon. You'll need to be smarter than them, Daniel. But don't worry. He leaned in close, voice low, venomous. I'll help you. After all, we're in this together now. Kincaid's stomach churned. He had killed Torres, but Marcus was holding the strings. And the worst part, he couldn't tell if he wanted to cut them, or if it was already too late. Morning light crept through the razor wire, slicing the prison yard into harsh angles. Inside, the hum of unease rippled through Stonewall like static. Marlene Torres had not returned home the night before. By breakfast, whispers had already spread beyond the walls in the staff lounge. A group of correctional officers huddled, their voices sharp with worry. She never misses a shift, one muttered. Not once. Another shook his head. Her car's still in the lot. She didn't just walk away. Kincaid sat among them, a coffee cooling untouched in his hands. His throat burned with silence. Every word that passed around him was a blade pressing deeper. Warden Collins entered, face grim, eyes heavy. He cleared his throat. Torres is missing. Local PD's been notified. Until further notice, everyone doubles up on rounds. No excuses. The room fell silent. Every officer nodded, but eyes darted, searching for meaning in one another's faces. Kincaid felt sweat prick at the back of his neck. He kept his gaze low, afraid to meet anyone's eyes. He forced a sip of coffee, its bitterness coating his tongue like ashdot. Later that day, as he patrolled East Block, Marcus Hale pressed close to the bars, his voice low and venomous. They're sniffing around, Daniel. Won't take long before they start knocking on your door. Kincaid shot him a glare. Shut your mouth. Marcus chuckled. What? Afraid someone will hear? You should be. Because the truth has a funny way of crawling out. And when it does, he leaned closer, his smile cutting through the shadows. You'll burn with it. Kincaid's hand twitched toward his baton, but he stopped himself. The other inmates were watching, eyes like vultures circling over carrion. He couldn't afford to snap. Not yet. That night, Back at his apartment, he found his door unlocked. His chest tightened as he pushed it open, his hand hovering near his holster. Inside, the living room was dark, except for a single envelope left on the coffee table. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. Marlene Torres. Her lifeless body slumped in the storage room, exactly as he had left her. Kincaid's breath caught. The photo trembled in his grip. He had been careful, so careful. Who had taken this? Who had been there? The note beneath the photo was scrawled in messy ink. "We own you now." His knees buckled. He sank onto the couch, the Polaroid burning his hands. His mind spiraled, paranoia clawing at him. Was it Marcus? Another inmate? Someone on staff? He realized with a chilling certainty, whoever it was, they weren't just watching. They were in control. The next morning, detectives arrived. Suits, sharp voices, colder than the rain outside. They questioned everyone where Torres had last been seen, who she had spoken to, what mood she was in when they turned to Kincaid. His heart nearly stopped. "Officer Kincaid," one detective said, notebook in hand. "You worked the same block as Torres that night, correct?" His mouth was dry. "Yes, she was. She was fine when I saw her. Focused, like always." The detective studied him with quiet intensity, pen scratching slowly. "And you didn't notice anything unusual?" Kincaid swallowed hard. "No, nothing unusual." The lie slipped out smooth, but his pulse betrayed him, drumming loud enough he feared they could hear. As the detectives moved on, Marcus's words echoed in his mind. The truth has a funny way of crawling out, and Kincaid knew it was only a matter of time. Rain lashed against the prison walls, as though the storm itself demanded justice. The air in Stonewall was charged, heavy with suspicion, with whispers that refused to die. Officer Daniel Kincaid walked the night shift like a man condemned, each step dragging chains no one else could see. Detectives had returned earlier that day. They pressed harder this time, their questions sharper, their eyes digging deeper. Where was Torres? Who saw her last? Why was Kincaid's report incomplete? He had answered with practiced calm, but inside, panic gnawed. He felt them circling, like wolves tasting blood. Now, in the silence of East Block, Marcus Hale was waiting. He leaned casually against the bars of his cell, his smirk gleaming in the dim light. "You're slipping, Daniel," Marcus whispered. "They smell the rot. Won't be long before they dig her up." Kincaid's jaw clenched. "You think this is funny? You think you're untouchable?" Marcus tilted his head, eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "I am untouchable. You, on the other hand, you're one shaky alibi away from life inside. Maybe even the chair." The words sliced deep. Kincaid's breath came ragged, his vision tunneling. His hand hovered near his holster. He wanted needed to silence Marcus, to end the smirk, the taunts, the strings pulling tighter around his neck. But before he could act, the heavy iron door at the end of the block clanged open. Warden Collins strode in, flanked by two detectives. Their eyes locked on Kincaid. "Officer Daniel Kincaid," one detective announced, his voice echoing through the concrete corridor. "You're under arrest for the murder of Marlene Torres." The world stopped. Kincaid froze, every muscle seizing. His chest heaved as the detectives approached, cuffs glinting in their hands. No, no, this isn't. His voice cracked, desperation flooding. You don't understand. He pointed at Marcus, his hand shaking violently. He set me up. He made me, Marcus chuckled darkly, stepping into the light. Crazy, isn't he? Been losing it for weeks. We all saw it. The detectives didn't look at Marcus. They kept their eyes fixed on Kincaid, their faces carved from stone. The cuffs snapped shut around his wrists, cold, final. No, Kincaid roared, struggling against their grip. You don't know what he's done. He's behind this. His words dissolved into the chaos of boots stomping, radios crackling, doors slamming. The storm outside swallowed his cries. As they dragged him past Marcus's cell, Hale leaned close, his whisper venomous. Welcome to the other side, officer. You're one of us now. Kincaid's vision blurred with rage and tears. He lunged, but the detectives held him firm, shoving him toward the exit. His screams echoed off the concrete until they were lost in the storm. In the aftermath, silence filled East Block. Marcus Hale sat back on his bunk, his smirk returning calm and victorious. The storm outside raged on, but inside, Stonewall was quiet once more, and somewhere in the darkness of the storage room, Marlene Torres's ghost lingered, the only truth left unspoken.